All right. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. Okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm Jake Wyman with the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Welcome to this week's edition of Capital Clarity. Thoughts on everything we can do as a state to protect life. Luckily for us, Idaho is one of the better states in the nation for protecting life, ranking 11th in the country. However, there's always more we can do to strengthen these pro-life protections. Unfortunately, despite our strong foundation, there are efforts underway to challenge that commitment. A proposed ballot initiative to add abortion to the Idaho ballot in November 2026 would permit the killing of preborn babies all the way up until the end of the second trimester, 24 weeks. This is a critical moment for us to take action. Now's the time to keep these protections for preborn babies in place. As champions of the Constitution, we believe that all people should have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our first guest speaker can speak to what is happening in our state right now to undermine our pro-life foundation. Kevin Krusiewicz serves as the Chief of Staff at the White Rose Resistance, the fastest growing pro-life nonprofit in America. Kevin plays a pivotal role in overseeing operations, which contributes to the organization's commitment to confronting the silence of the American Church on abortion. The White Rose Resistance is working to educate, equip, and engage the church in order to bring about resistance, revival, and reformation. Please welcome Kevin Krusiewicz. Okay. Good? Yep. Make sure that's on.
All right. Thanks for coming down in the middle of the day. Appreciate it. I'll introduce myself a little bit more fully, but that was a great introduction in the sense that it connects to something I want to highlight. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Remember where that's from? Anybody know? Declaration of Independence. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all still on the same page? Okay. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So before we get into sort of the state of affairs in Idaho as it pertains to abortion, I just want to kind of go back to some first principles briefly. This is not the main thing that we need to talk about today, but the pro-life position is this. Premise one, it's always morally impermissible, in other words, morally wrong, to intentionally kill an innocent human being. It's always morally impermissible or wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Before I get to premise two and the conclusion of that syllogism, anybody in this room disagree with that premise? Anybody disagree with that premise? No, nobody? Nobody brave enough to say they disagree with the premise that it's always morally impermissible or morally wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being? Okay, so we're all on the same page, right? And this is actually where you start argumentation from, an agreed upon first premise, a first principle, right? Premise two, abortion always intentionally kills an innocent human being. And that, of course, being the second premise, is the thing we have to prove. The argument is cogent because the conclusion is, therefore, abortion is always morally impermissibly wrong. Okay? It's impermissible. It's always morally wrong because if the first premise is true and the second premise is true, the conclusion necessarily follows. That's a syllogism, right? Remember this from logic class? How many remember that from logic class? We got a few people. Uh-oh, we're in trouble. Uh-oh. It's necessarily cogent. So what's needed is, if we agree on the first premise, the second premise needs to be proven. Actually, not here to prove that premise today. because I'm coming from a pro-life position. I'm happy to dialogue with you about that if you're concerned about the logic there. But here's the thing about first principles, is that they're self-evident, which means they're table stakes. What are the self-evident table stakes principles in America? We heard it in the Declaration of Independence. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, as endowed by the Creator, that cannot be alienated by a government. And insofar as a government seeks to do that, or is insufficiently protecting those rights, what is the duty of the citizen? Change it, or overcome it, as we did in 1776. Remember that? Okay, so hopefully we're on the same page. So when we talk about first premises, when we talk about things that are self-evident, we can't argue for them. We're arguing from them. We're assuming them. And if you don't share that assumption, that is, by definition, anti-American. By the way, the piece about being endowed by a creator, that's also part of the premise, necessarily. The 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees that nobody can be deprived of life or liberty without what? Due process, some kind of adjudication, right? Some judge, some court, some jury that is going to do its due diligence. Hopefully, if you're that person in question, wouldn't you want that due diligence to be done before life or liberty is taken from you? In his I Have a Dream speech, MLK Jr., of course, reminds us that our first principles were not being equally applied in the case of race, okay? In his day, to all human beings. And pro-lifers are making the exact same case, the exact same claim with reference to a different class of human beings, not blacks, but the preborn among us. In other words, all of us at an earlier stage of our lives. Many people believe that abortion has ended in this state. It has not. It's still happening. It's alive and well. And today we're going to talk about that truth and talk about next steps to fully end abortion for all Idahoans. My name is Kevin Krusiewicz, short for Kevin Kru. If you need to use that truncation, I'm happy with that. I'm the Chief of Staff at the White Rose Resistance and Executive Producer of the 1916 Project film. If you've heard of that, we showed it here in this room 2 nights ago. And we recognize that progress is being made and has been made in Idaho. Strong pro-life laws, reduced abortion numbers, but we also see some loopholes that is continuing the killing of our preborn neighbors. And we're not here to reject progress, but we are here to complete it. And our goal is to push forward until abortion is not just illegal, but unthinkable and criminal. Criminal. Yeah, that's right. The question we must answer is, will we regulate abortion or will we abolish it? Now, this slide had to be amended just before I got here because can you guess what was next to this picture of a perfectly intact, healthy child in the womb in juxtaposition to it? Can you imagine what I would have put on this slide? Yeah. No, nothing like that. Yeah, a dismembered child, somebody who's been aborted. Wasn't able to show that because we live in a country where truth is censored. And if we were to stream that on YouTube, Idaho Freedom Foundation would lose the ability to stream in the future. That's where we live because we're living in obfuscation. And the Ministry of Truth put that down the memory hole. So I couldn't show you that image as we're talking about abortion, even though I wanted to show you what abortion is, because you can't handle the truth, apparently. Did you know that? So Idaho's done more than most states to protect the unborn, but is it enough? If abortion's still happening, if preborn children are still being killed, our work's not done. Today I'm going to show you exactly how abortion continues in Idaho and what we must do to stop it. So chemical abortions now make up the majority of all U.S. abortions, about 63%, and that stat was from 2023. I don't think we have numbers yet for 2024. These pills are being used in Idaho, despite our laws banning most abortions. And the pro-abortion movement has shifted away from emphasizing clinics and towards self-managed, mail-order abortions, or through clinics that are over state lines. And we're going to talk about that as well. Official sources, even some conservative sources, claim that there are almost no abortions still happening in Idaho. 5, maybe there's 5 abortions happening in Idaho. There's actually about 1,200. 1,200 of our neighbors are being slaughtered with no opportunity to speak for themselves. Can't call them citizens yet, but maybe we should. However, data from the Boise State Public Radio, abortion aid groups, and independent investigators, they tell a different story. It's actually 1,200. And so that means over 1,200 babies were still killed, despite this being a pro-life state. So on its face, there's obviously an internal inconsistency here. We have a problem. We have laws that were intended to affect certain outcomes. They're not very efficacious in that regard, are they? Are they? Would you call that efficacy? Effectiveness? We're supposed to get to 0, we're at 1,200. Okay, feel free to participate. So despite our abortion laws, websites, which are of course accessible here, that might originate in a server somewhere else, openly sell and ship abortion pills. We're going to get into that a little bit more in a second here, to our residents here. And some organizations claim legal loopholes that allow them to distribute abortion pills, ignoring our laws here in the state. Social media platforms help women find these services while censoring pro-life groups, exposing them. So I could probably pull up that website and show you how it works, where you can order a death pill for your baby to get to this state, but I can't actually show you the outcome of that on the screen because it'll get taken off YouTube. Isn't that ironic? What's going on here? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do an unboxing for you live. And I have a previously opened box of abortion pills, and I have a previously unopened box of abortion pills. And it might be a nothing burger with the second one. We'll see what's inside there. But did we freeze? Oh. Either the demons are against us.
It's the first time it's frozen.
It's the first time it's frozen. Okay. Is it one of those weird, awkward freeze frames? Okay, so, hey, I've been saying that you can order abortion pills here in this pro-life state. This is a mail-order abortion kit that somebody close to our ministry ordered from here, and I'm going to open it up for you. I'm going to open it up for you and let's see what's inside. Okay, we got a lot of stuff here, a lot of loose stuff, so I'm going to kind of go through it one by one. We have some antiseptic here. We have some raspberry tea for mom. They don't use the word mom, by the way, in the packaging. I'll get to these in a second. We have some pads, some menstrual pads. And I'm going to get to the insert and the literature here in a second. We have some diotame. We have some other kinds of medications, ibuprofen. We have a heat patch. You get cramps during this procedure. Somebody over on the other end is being really thoughtful. We have a little mint or candy. So it's a sweet affair. And then we have some literature here. Okay. So need support to self-manage your miscarriage or abortion? Call the M&A hotline. Okay, I've got some ways to reach out for help. We got some literature here. Abortion pills are medically safe, effective, and available in every state. All of them. Learn more at plancpills.org and a bunch of abortion resources, of course, there. And then, of course, the highly scrutinized, straight from the medical journals, insert with clip art. And I'm just going to highlight a few of these things. So these are instructions for use. The protocol is it's a 2-part process, of course, right? So you have mifepristone and misoprostol, okay? And so there's these 2 Doesn't this look like this came from a legitimate dispensary? We have MF and MS. Who knows what's inside of these? Would you feel confident if your daughter, who's 16, let's say, just decided to pop one of these with a little sticker on the front that says MF? What if it's something else? I don't know, it sounds a little shady to me. Instructions for taking this, you know, and sort of minimizing the displeasure of it. Instructions for 9 weeks or less, or more than 9 weeks. By the way, abortion, or these types of chemical abortions, are considered really, really unsafe if you're more than 10 weeks. I'm not going to go into all of the detail, but the Biden administration, and previous to that, the Obama administration, had lifted many of the requirements for this medication to require some kind of ultrasound to ensure that the mother she didn't have a tubal pregnancy, an ectopic pregnancy. Do you know what will happen to a woman if she's got a tubal pregnancy and she takes these? She might die, actually. So there's instructions here explicitly on what you should do differently if you're in the 9-week plus category versus the 9-week or less category. Yes, the process is going to hurt. Breathe, meditate. What to expect? Cramping, nausea, your hormones are changing, nausea and vomiting may happen. Cramping, bleeding, clots, in parenthesis, up to the size of a walnut. Up to the size of a walnut, a clot. You know it's also the size of a walnut at that stage? It's a baby. It's a baby. Yes, the process is going to hurt. Breathe and meditate. Here's some peppermint tea. Do not drink peppermint tea if you're nursing. It will lower your milk supply. That's kind of strange. We're concerned about milk supply. I mean, in the main, we probably should be. But once we've thrown life out the window, is that really apropos? Hotlines and mental health support. Lots of people who go through what you're going through need mental health support afterwards. Well, I'm glad we have full disclosure. There's no shame in needing support and asking for it. There are wonderful support lines ready to support you, even a year or two from now. Like when your conscience really starts bothering you. Faith-based, non-judgmental emotional support. So glad it's faith-based. I wonder what faith that is. Contact me on Signal if you need any help. If you're having a mental health emergency or suicidal ideation, text this number. If you soak 2 pads in 2 hours or have a fever for more than 6 hours that won't lower with Tylenol, go to the hospital. Good advice. Do not tell them you took medications. They are not detectable and they will treat you for miscarriage. Raise your hand if you think this is a problem. Oh, well, we should just make abortion legal. That's not the point, and that's actually not the problem. The problem is there's clear contravention of the law at great risk to women and in certain death for children or walnuts. And I couldn't show you that that bit of that imagery that actually was showing what we're talking about. So I'm not going to have time, I don't think, to open this other package. I haven't even opened it yet. This guy. Just for the sake of time, it looks like there's probably a lot less in here. I have no idea what's in here. We haven't even opened it yet. Maybe if you want to stick around afterwards, we can do that together. So massive problems with this. So no doctor, no ultrasound, no safety checks, just 2 pills designed to kill. Oh, and some raspberry tea. And some candy. This package could be in the hands of any woman or minor, actually, your 14-year-old daughter in Idaho. And it's not illegal for her to take it. Sorry, I'm getting not synced up here with two slide decks going at the same time. So that's the abortion pill. That's bringing abortion to Idaho women. There's also a dynamic where Idaho women are being brought to abortion clinics across state lines. You guys remember this? I think it was on Chinden a year ago, maybe State Street. I can't remember exactly where, but this was being displayed. Okay, so abortion is not just happening through pills, it's happening through travel. Women are being aided by pro-abortion groups to cross state lines for abortions. And these groups help fund transportation and lodging to ensure abortions happen despite Idaho's ban. Okay, my time's getting to an end. There's a lot more to say, and I'll show you where places you can go to learn more. But let's just get to some kind of action items here, or things that we need to do to deal with this inconsistency that, as I mentioned before, is inherently un-American because it deprives a person, a human being, from due process before life and liberty is deprived. Okay? We need to criminalize abortion by any means. It's criminal. We need to make it criminal for a mom to perform an abortion. So that sounds mean. Isn't she the victim? Yeah, she probably is a victim. We have ways of adjudicating that. It's criminal for a mom to kill her 1-year-old, right? Somebody comes down, we have a 9-month-old back there, something like that, 1-year-old. What do we do to women who drive their kids into lakes? What do we do to them? Do you remember that? Like 10 years ago, this woman drove her 4 kids into a lake and they all perished. Do we have a right to legislate morality? Of course we do. That's what legislation's for. It's to dictate morality. What did we do to her? Anybody remember? I can't remember. She's in jail. Why? Because it's criminal. You don't get to kill other human beings, even if they're your kids. What about a 1-month-old? Does that change anything? What if we wanted to kill my 1-month-old? How's that work? Can't do it? Why not? They're totally dependent. There's no ontological difference between a 1-month-old and a preborn child. I threw out a big word there. Ontological has to do with the essence of the thing. A preborn child is the same kind of thing as a 1-year-old, is the same kind of thing as a 2-year-old, is the same kind of thing as a teenager, is the same kind of thing as an adult. You understand that, right? It's a human kind of thing. Why would it be any different? Why would the penalty be any different if we're killing somebody 2 days before birth than if we kill them 2 days after birth? Doesn't make any sense. All men are created equal is our first principle from the Constitution. Remember that? It's assumed. We don't have to argue for it. We get to argue from it. Idaho must enforce its laws and close the remaining loopholes. Legislators, citizens. Legislators must act to prevent mail-order abortions and punish those trafficking these drugs. And abortion travel must also be addressed. If it's illegal here, we must not allow it to happen elsewhere. We just shifted the numbers, folks, to Oregon and Washington and Montana, right? And Nevada. There's no fewer surgical abortions happening. What can you do as a citizen? We need to hold our lawmakers accountable. Partner with lawmakers that are of like mind. Partial victories are still victories, but they're not sufficient. They're not enough. We need to be at the hearings, at the protests, in direct contact with those writing our laws, which is, I think, why you guys are here. And you guys at home might be thinking about what to do. If we don't demand abolition, it's not going to happen. We abolished slavery on what basis? Going back to MLK, on the basis of, hey, the Constitution was a promissory note. Remember that? It was a promissory note. We have an ethic. We have a value system that says all men were created equal, regardless of class of men. And MLK rightly pointed out, even though slavery was abolished, that those rights and privileges were not being equally applied to all Americans. The same thing is happening here. The fight is far from over, but together we can finish it. And we have to ask ourselves, when all is said and done, are we going to be the generation that abolishes abortion in Idaho. Just quickly about us, the White Rose Resistance, we're a nationwide movement dedicated to being a voice for unborn children. Why? Because they can't speak for themselves, can they? Our purpose is to educate and expose culture to the evil of abortion until every person has a right to escape the womb, otherwise known as being born. So what do? We do films. We do books. We do podcasts. Check out the Seth Gruber Show. Why? Why would I encourage you to do that? To learn, to get educated. We have some pamphlets in the back, some leaflets to help make some of these arguments. We do conferences, the Life or Death Con and March for Life in Washington, D.C. in January, the Life or Death Tour that's happening right now at churches nationwide, and the Last Stand Conference in June in Southern California. So I want to encourage you guys to engage with our content, watch our films, read our books, listen to our podcasts, get educated, participate in our events, and also consider becoming an ally. And there's some ways, actually, if you scan this QR code, it's going to take you right to where you can do that. I think I've probably gone over, or maybe just right on time. So I'll take one or two questions before I hand it off to our senators. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. You're talking about being responsible for your actions? That is a problem, and I have opinions about that problem that I could speak for another half an hour on. Suffice it to say, some people will never do that, or accidents happen, or whatever. But when accidents happen, and human beings are the result of it, don't we have a different duty now? In the back? If that's still happening here, that's really problematic, right? It's obviously in contradiction and contravention of our law. We have a deeper problem. The people don't see these truths as self-evident. They're actually disagreeing with the first premise of America, which I actually think that actually disqualifies you as an American. I actually agree that we need to have like terms and conditions for what it means to be an American, that you can't disagree with first premises and still get to be a citizen. That's a different topic, a different talk. Yeah. We don't do firsthand research. I mean, others are doing that kind of research. It's my understanding, and I'm not an expert here, but it's my understanding that, for instance, the COVID vaccination would have been impossible without the use of abortive tissue. By the way, I hate to break the news to you, but like a lot of our medications, that's also the case. So like there's moral conundrums throughout that whole process. One more question before I let our senators up, and I'll be in the back, and we got 3 or 4 of us back here. Yes, one more. I'm not familiar with that, but I do want to take that opportunity to talk about a distinction. It's not an abortion when you're not intending to kill the child. If you're trying to deliver a child in a scenario where the mother's life is at risk and the child dies unintentionally, that is not an abortion. So there's not actually a medical necessity for abortion. You can always try to save a baby, and you might lose the baby in the process. All right, that's it. I'm going to ask Mr. Shippy, are you coming up first, or? Thanks so much.
please give it up again for Kevin Krusiewicz. So our next speaker actually is Senator Tammy Nichols. Senator Nichols is a longtime champion for our most vulnerable. She introduced legislation this session that would educate children on the basics of biological fetal development in order to combat the current mainstream narrative that life is not always life until a certain period. Instead, it is and will always be life. Please welcome Senator Tammy Nichols.
We know what kind of microphone we're going to give you. So thank you for being here, and I appreciate the time. We've had some great things happening ever since Roe v. Wade was basically thrown out of the system. We knew that there was going to need to be some changes on how we handled crisis pregnancies and moms and babies and all of that good stuff, because we wanted to make sure that they're being taken care of. So we've really turned to the adoption side of things, because we felt that that is how we can help. That is what we can do to help these moms and to save babies. And so Idaho has really taken the lead, starting really the last couple of years, on adoption issues, and have really brought in some really good things. Last session, I think we passed 4 or 5 pieces of legislation that had to do with adoption, and this year we're continuing that. In fact, if you're familiar with the organization Live Action, they highlighted Idaho at their legislative summit last year, and really to recognize what Idaho has done in that regard. And in fact, they are going to be having their legislative summit in Idaho this year, because we've done so well on that. So I wanted to talk about just 2 pieces of legislation that myself and Representative Heather Scott are running. And so the first one has to do with education. And this has to do, you might have heard of something called Baby Olivia. It is something that Live Action produces, where it's a fetal development video. It's a high graphic, almost a little bit cartoonish in nature, but very high graphic 3D video that shows the development of the fetal process and what happens from conception to birth. And the reason that we felt that this was really important, and Representative Heather Scott had shared this with me while we were at Live Action last year, is that she had her niece with her, and they were at a county fair, and there was a pro-life table there, and they have the display of the babies in the different gestations. And she took her niece over there, and they went to look at it. Her niece is a teenager, and Heather, well, isn't this really neat? And her niece said, "Aunt Heather, that's not real. That's just what they tell you to get you to come over to their table. We've been taught that those are just blobs of cells, and that they don't become a baby until they're born." So she said she was just shocked by that. And so we knew that there's this disconnect that's taking place. And so our purpose with running this bill, and basically what this does, is that it is not, and I argue this on the Senate floor, this is not a sex education bill. This is a human biology development education. And so I really wanted to make sure that that distinction was honed in, that we are not talking about sex ed. So what this does is, in biology class, if they're discussing biology, human anatomy, that they also show this video. And it doesn't have to be this one specifically, but a video like it, and also a 3D ultrasound to be able to show that process and to plant that seed. The sex part comes in, where if they are talking about contraception, STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, and those sorts of things, that they also do have to show this video like this and a 3D ultrasound, because we really wanted to create that connection, plant that seed in these kids. And this is from 5th through 12th grade, so our bill is 5th through 12th grade. And just kind of a little bit of info on that in Idaho's education standards, we actually are starting to teach biology in 1st grade. There's different things that we have set into our standards that biology is taught in 1st grade. And then it really is honed in on in 3rd grade. And in fact, in 5th grade, they are actually talking about sexually transmitted diseases, HIV, things along those lines. So we want to show the flip side and plant that seed so that, especially when we have young girls that are found in a situation, in a pregnancy crisis situation, that they know that that is a human being that is inside their body, that it is not a blob of cells, and that it will help them to make better decisions on what they're going to do. So that's the first bill, and it did pass the Senate floor. It is over on the House side now. So we should have a hearing on that next week. I'll take questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so that one is 1046. Yep, Senate Bill 1046. The second one I wanted to talk about is Senate Bill 1058, and that is the Safe Haven Bill. In Idaho last year, we passed safe haven legislation. And if you're not familiar with what that is it's basically a box that is built into places like hospitals, police departments, fire stations, emergency responder type buildings. And it's a box where women that find themselves in a crisis situation and they've had that baby, that they can actually drop that baby off in a box, no questions asked, walk away, and that baby is taken in. And so we just had our first one put in. It's in Blackfoot currently right now, but there is talk of these being opened up all throughout Idaho. They have them in other states. They have saved babies' lives with that. And so we wanted to add a little bit more clarification to this. And the way that we approach this is that usually when that happens, the way that's set up right now is that once those babies are received in, they go into a foster care system. Well, we know that there are families that are out there that have been vetted and ready to take in a baby to adopt. And so we wanted to make sure, and we've heard about how our foster care system has a lot of kids that are trying to get into the foster care system. And we wanted to alleviate some of that burden off of foster care families and try to get these babies straight into homes. So what it makes the change at is that we're requiring the Department of Health and Welfare to have a list of adoption agencies that they can get a hold of. Once that baby's taken in, then that Health and Welfare contacts an adoption agency, and then they have 24 hours to be able to get that baby to an adoptive family. And like I said, in that way, we're taking away that middle portion where that baby can go into a home, start that bonding process, and they're not being shuffled around in the foster care system. So we wanted to really make sure that that's taken care of. Now, we had a section, or I guess some concern with what would happen if that baby might be perceived as a tribal baby, because we have 5 tribes that are here in Idaho. So we went ahead and utilized a provision in there that is based on federal law that we align to, and it's the Indian Child Welfare Act. So if they are perceived as a tribal baby, then they go ahead and go through that process of contacting the tribes and being able to determine if that baby is a tribal baby or not. The other portion with this is that if the child cannot get into a forever home within 24 hours, then, or they have a medical need or something, they can stay in the hospital, and then it goes through the process of a judge will determine a process for that child to go into a home, foster care, or what have you. But again, the reason that we're doing this is that we want to make sure that they are getting right into adoptive families, because they are there, ready, vetted, waiting for that phone call, and they will do whatever they need to do to get that baby. So we're really honing in on trying to make sure that children are given that first ability to be able to have those forever homes. We have another bill that we're also doing, and this has to do with just more care for birth mothers, and that is Senate Bill 1140. And what that does is that we already have, adoptive families pay for a lot of expenses for the birth mothers. They're adopting the baby, and so they help take care of some of those costs. And what this does is this adds in counseling, that they're able to receive counseling if they so wish, and that they're notified that they have counseling available as well as legal representation. of their own. It's been found that sometimes, unfortunately, women are taken advantage of in certain situations. We want to make sure that they are given the care that they need and that they know what their legal rights are. And so this just provides that as part of the treatment. There's been a lot of studies shown and done that the counseling process really does help. These women are in very sad situations sometimes, crisis pregnancies, abuse, different things along those lines. And so they're making a very huge decision instead of having an abortion or something like that, that they're going through the birth and they still know that they're not going to either be a good mom or that they just can't handle it at that time. And so we want to make sure that they are mentally taken care of, that they are able to handle the process going through that and given the help that they need so that they don't feel like they're just being used or that they don't have help. And so that's what those two provisions do in that bill. Again, all three of these bills have already made it off the Senate floor, so they're over here they're over on the House side. And we're very, very excited to be able to present those. Again, Idaho is taking a huge stride, huge lead in adoption and making sure that we're facilitating not only for the baby, but for the mother, for the families, because we want to make sure that they're all taken care of. So with that, I will answer a few questions and then turn it over. Thank you. Yeah. That one's the Safe Haven bill. It's Senate Bill 1058. Any other questions? Yeah. You know what? I'll have to double check on that. I have not seen that bill out yet, but I have heard talk about that, and I think we have someone that will be talking about that one here coming up. So, any other questions? Yeah. There are a lot of parents that would like to adopt. And, most parents want to, it's just the way it is. They want to start with a newborn. But we have kids of all ages that are needing forever homes still. But yes, there are a lot of families that want to adopt. Yeah. There are things that are being put into place, and there's stuff on the federal level and state level. There's adoption credit, tax credits, and things along those lines. And I know Director Adams here, he's the Director of Health and Welfare, and he's been doing an amazing job. And he is really trying to hone in on the foster care system, adoption, so all these different processes. But there is help. There is help for adoptive families, and a lot of businesses where they work at too have different provisions that they have available for adoption when they're going through that process. Like they get time off and paid time off and different things. So we're working that direction in a lot of different ways. So thanks for that question. Yeah. They're usually done through like grants and different entities that will help with that. We only have one so far, so we've only done the one. But there's a lot of different organizations that will help with that. I think there is some government money that you can get with some of those too, in the form of grants. But they are usually utilized that way for the payments. We're going to be talking about that. Like I said, there's interest in opening up more in the state of Idaho. So we'll be working with other organizations to see what's the best process in facilitating that. Okay. Sure, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much again. Really appreciate your time, and I will turn it over.
Please give it up again for Senator Tammy Nichols. For our final speaker is Senator Brandon Shippy. Senator Shippy made headlines this year with his legislation that would give equal protections to the preborn in his Idaho Prenatal Equal Protections Act. Unfortunately, this bill is being held in committee by Senator Jim Guthrie, but the introduction of this legislation was a great step in the right direction. Please welcome Senator Brandon Shippy.
Well, thank you everyone for being here, and I want to thank the Idaho Freedom Foundation for offering me this platform to talk a little bit about the Idaho Prenatal Equal Protection Act. So I agree with much of what was said earlier, especially about the nature of human beings and the assumptions that we work from, and how we understand a human being's right to life. In our Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we read, "All men are by nature free and equal and have certain inalienable rights, among which are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring and possessing and protecting property, pursuing happiness and securing safety." Section 2, "All political power is inherent in the people, and government is instituted for their equal protection and benefit." And I want to talk, I want to keep it fairly narrow today. I want to talk about the issue as I see it with, as was mentioned, we need to abolish abortion, with legislation that promotes abolition of abortion versus a regulated style of perpetuating abortion in Idaho. So the Idaho Prenatal Equal Protection Act, what it does at its very base is it understands the equal humanity of the baby in the womb. I don't use a lot of fancy words as Kevin, I don't recall how to say your last name, so I apologize, uses. So it is our inherent humanity that determines our value and our worth. We are created in the image of God. That is the basic premises by which I understand this issue. You and I are equally human. It does not matter whether you're rich or you're poor, whether you have a lot of folks who love you or no one who loves you. At the end of the day, you are equally valuable based upon the internal reality of your humanity, not upon external circumstances. And so when we look at issues such as the rape exception in our Idaho Code, that was placed there by legislators. What that does is it says that there's something external to this small human being that makes them less valuable than other human beings in the womb. Other problems with Idaho Code is that with our Defense of Life Act, it was the trigger bill. Other problems with it is that it gives different penalties for crimes of murder. As was mentioned earlier, if it's a human being and you kill it, you murder it, an innocent human being, the penalties shouldn't vary. It shouldn't be different if you're a month old or 2 months old or a year old or preborn. But yet, there is a class of people, namely the mothers, who are exempt in all situations. And what that does is it creates an inequity in the law in two ways. Number one, it dehumanizes the mother because it denies her moral agency. It denies her moral agency because it denies her moral accountability. And it creates a weird system where a certain type of people is treated differently under the law than anyone else. And so in this case, a woman is not treated equitably in the moral and legal order. And there are consequences that follow with that. One of the consequences is that it's not illegal, it's not criminal to coerce somebody into doing something that's not criminal for them to do. So pimps and sex traffickers thrive under this because there's no ramifications for them to coerce their sex slave or whatever it might be into having an abortion. So that's an outflow of bad policy. That's an outflow of bad policy. But I want to illustrate where I think in large part, where the pro-life I guess, movement and pro-life laws have gone off the rails, and how we see that played out. And we saw that the other day in State Affairs Committee. Senate Bill 1077 was a problem for me. Number one, it tried to have the state replace the church by allocating $1 million to pay for pregnancy centers that are supported by donations and churches and so forth. And that's a problem. But beyond that, it did a little change in the law. What it did was it starts with the premise of this new law, this new crime that's been created in Idaho called criminal abortion. Criminal abortion is not considered murder because different circumstances surrounding this can change the outcome, the value of the baby. So external circumstances can change. So it says this is criminal abortion, and then it says here's what's not criminal abortion. One of the lists is that a miscarriage is not criminal abortion, or if the baby is deceased. Well, that's pretty straightforward. If the baby is deceased, it's not criminal abortion. That's medically maybe they could call it abortion, but it's not criminal abortion. That's pretty easy. But one of the definitions then is that if a woman is raped and she gets a police report filed, that then it's no longer criminal abortion. A doctor can intentionally murder a human being under this case. And what the change that the bill brought was that it says that before the abortion doctor can perform the abortion, he must give 3 pamphlets. One that talks about the nature of the baby in the womb, and one that talks about the procedures of ending its life, and then another one about the possible ramifications. Maybe that's in the second one, and then a lot of other resources and so forth. So what it does is it says it's criminal abortion if the mom doesn't understand what she's doing to her own child, or potentially doesn't. But once she has been fully informed or has received the opportunity to be fully informed and has had 24 hours to meditate on this, once it's premeditated for 24 hours, then it's no longer criminal abortion. And it goes exactly backwards. It's painted in, we're going to save lives because hopefully this woman will change her mind. But what it does is it says, before there was premeditation, it's criminal abortion. After there's premeditation, it's no longer criminal abortion, it's legal abortion. And it goes exactly backwards from true justice. Justice is if you understood what you're doing, you're held to a higher account than if you didn't understand. And this is where I see that the often pro-life laws, they're not grounded in justice, they're not grounded in truth, they're not grounded in what is claimed to be grounded in, which is that every human being has a right to life. But if your right to life is derived from your inherent humanity, then it's to be applied equal to everyone, without exception. So if you provide exceptions, you deny the right to life. What it is the legislature saying that they have the authority to ascribe or assign or determine the value of a human being based upon external circumstances. The legislature has no other authority from God or the Constitution but to apply all laws equally to all human beings. It has no other authority. So that's why I brought the Idaho Prenatal Equal Protection Act, Senate Bill 1059. We are getting House and Senate sponsors on it right now. We have been told that we won't get a hearing this year, but we were able to get a bill number. We're able to have these conversations with legislators. I'm getting co-sponsors. I appreciate the question by the young lady over here. I don't believe Senator Nichols is on it yet, but I would love to see her added to this list. I think we've got 17 so far. But it's a simple approach. It just simply recognizes the equal humanity and applies the law equal to the preborn as the born humans. And so at the end of the day, if we're not legislating on the reality of the right to life, on that foundation, what business does the legislature have at all to infringe upon personal liberties? I believe in personal liberties. The only thing that makes abortion a crime is that you are infringing upon that baby's personal liberties and rights, which is the right to life. So that's why I brought this legislation. I'll probably go ahead and stop there. It looks like I'm right at the top of the hour. So I appreciate your time and attention on this, and I will stand for any questions. Yes. And so could you repeat that so I can repeat it for the camera? The 9 months that made you is a documentary that explains the development of the baby in the womb. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, in the back. So I'll just repeat the question. So Senator Guthrie is holding the bill in committee at the request of Attorney General Rollo Labrador. That is, I hate to use the word, that's true and not true. That's probably not the proper way to say that. Senator Guthrie disagrees with the bill himself and would prefer not to see it in committee. I can't speak of words that have been exchanged between the Attorney General and Chairman Guthrie. I have spoken with the Attorney General myself, and he indicated that this bill wouldn't affect ongoing litigation, probably very much, because it deals with different law. They indicated at the Attorney General's office that it could complicate some of the litigation, the ongoing litigation, because of arguments that might be brought if this bill were to pass. So that's my understanding of it. If we were to work on some of the existing laws that are being litigated, then it does make their job harder as the Attorney General. So that's my understanding of that. Senator Guthrie does work with, just to show a little bit behind the scenes, he does communicate with Senate leadership on decisions whether or not to hear a bill or to hold a bill. So it isn't only Senator Guthrie that is coming to those decisions and conclusions, but it's with alongside the Senate leadership in their decisions of that. Any other questions? Yes. Thank you for the question. So the question was, what do I mean by Senate leadership? Is it the President Pro Tem? Is it, I think, the Majority Leader? You said, so who is it that is helping to make these decisions? And it is, I would say it's probably, first it's the Pro Tem, and then it would also involve the Majority Leader, which is Lori Den Hartog, and then the President Pro Tem is Kelly Anthony. It probably involves, some of the discussions probably involve the caucus chairman, Ben Taves, but I'm not sure of that. And how they approach it is they like to take the input from the Republican caucus and see where the caucus is at and then make decisions on certain bills, whether to hear or not to hear, type of thing. So if that makes sense. So I would say that every Republican senator should be contacted and pleaded with, explained to the issues, and ultimately, I would love to see every Republican senator and every Democrat senator to be persuaded of the truth and support this bill. I would love to see this bill get unanimous consent on the Senate floor. But, so that's going to be a lot of work. It's going to take the change of heart on many, maybe all, I guess. Well, we did have a lot of signers, so that's great. But it does take, I think it does take a work of the Lord working in the heart as well. So be in prayer for the senators, have conversations, send emails, letters, meet with them, whatever way that you can communicate the importance of this. There is nothing more important in Idaho than protecting life. And I do believe that the blood of the innocent cries out from the ground, and we ask God's blessing on us, right? If we'll humble ourselves, people say, and He'll hear us. But what does it mean to humble ourselves but to submit to the truth? And will He bless us if we don't protect the most vulnerable? So I think this is of the utmost importance in Idaho. There's not a more important piece of legislation. And when it comes to the other issues, I think the first issue here is going to be equal protection of the preborn. I'm not banning pills. I'll be honest, is not on my high priority list. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. And so abortion pills are the same way. Abortion pills don't kill people. People kill people. And so I think we have to cut the tree off at its root when it comes to that. So this question. Yeah, so it's Senate Bill 1059. It can be found online, and you can see all the co-sponsors as well on there as we add them. So, all right, well, thank you so much. Thank you. So it's PDF.